coaching, and you learned a lot in that high school and growing up through football. That you see a lot of techniques, quite frankly, that I still see professional football players not even doing the little details, and it's making me screaming at my TV on Sundays. But won a lot of games. Ended up going to college at the University of Minnesota for sports management. It was right when the movie Jerry Maguire had come out. And so as a former athlete, I was walking on to the track team. I was all state in track all 4 years. So went to actually the championships in the Junior Olympics in the 4x1. A couple guys ended up playing in the NFL. But
very nice.
There's a brag for you. But I went to school for sports management. I wanted to be, really involved in sports, and quite frankly, the dream job was always going to be general manager of the Green Bay Packers. I pursued it after.
Still attainable.
Yeah, well, it would be a lot harder now. But I pursued sports after that. I worked for a sports agency here in the Twin Cities. So I did actually have communications and conversations with former front office players, executives, I should say, like Reggie McKenzie and John Dorsey and Russ Ball at the time.
That is awesome.
Yeah, so in 2008, here's the big brag I've always said. I was studying film of players that we were trying to recruit. So I would help the head agents recruit, athletes. And I got this film, and I was watching this white wide receiver out of Kansas State. And,
I already know.
and I'm like, there's no way we're going to get this guy. This guy's a first-round talent. And I said, because we're not going to get the big-time, players. They wouldn't sign with our agency. They're going to sign with the big-time agencies. We had to go after, 5th, 6th, 7th rounders and beyond. And so draft day comes, and, of course, I'm watching it with my, Packer goggles on, and they trade out of the first round. All of a sudden, in the top of the second round, they draft this wide receiver, George Nelson, and everyone just starts freaking out in Packer world. And I'm like, oh my God, they totally drafted this kid that I totally thought I had this huge man crush on. And sure enough, he ends up being Jordy Nelson that everyone knows, but at the time, nobody liked that pick. And I was defending that pick so hard on PackerNet and the comment section back then. We could go back into those files. That'd be interesting to see. But anyway, I met a lot of famous athletes working at a professional sports agency. A lot of athletes, to be honest. And then I think my big claim to fame was beating Ben Fennell at a Super Bowl party. I spotted him. Like, who spots Ben Fennell, right? But I'm a huge follower, a huge fan of his.
I love Ben. His highlight stuff is amazing. I love it.
His work is great. He's one of the few guys where if he does an analysis and breakdown on a player, I trust what he is saying a lot more than most people, especially in 100%
Twitter. Agree.
Right. So anyway, fast forward, I started a Packers blog in 2009. Didn't really know what the heck I was doing. This was kind of before podcasts were in vogue, so I didn't do a podcast. I realized I hate writing articles. I did some draft articles because that was my thing. Is I could do the draft. I evaluate talent. It got posted in Pro Football Weekly, so I was pretty proud of that. And then WTMJ 620 actually approached me. Their vice president of communications at the time. They wanted to buy my domain name and my Twitter handle for me.
That is awesome.
Yeah, they offered me a bunch of money, and I turned it down because I wanted to hold out either for more, or I just wanted to keep doing this because this was too much fun. So I ended up not selling it, and I kind of taken some breaks here a little bit more recently. I used to be pretty hardcore with all the stuff, but my job, I work in mortgages during the day, and I work 24/7. So it's been a lot tougher to do all the the tweeting and everything. I see stuff, I just don't take the time to necessarily tweet it. That's what I'm thinking all the time, but like I used to. But I'm always on. I'm always watching, and I see what everyone is saying. And I love the Packer Twitter community and the podcast community. So I appreciate, again, this is my first time being on one. You guys do a great job. I listened to your post-draft podcast. You guys knocked it out the park.
Well, I appreciate
now I'm watching a little bit.
Yeah, I'm a little flattered. Thank you. actually.
I know. I'm like, can someone give me a tissue, please?
It's the first time I've gotten a
But
compliment.
no,
like that.
actually, Brian, I got to come out and ask you out. Hey, if you want to talk some Packers football, I'm going to put you right on the spot. So I put out a tweet. I know you probably saw it. I got to ask. So I put out a poll about 5 days ago, and I said, for a surprise roster cut, I'm just saying, if you had to pick one of them, who would you pick? It's Mason Crosby, Brian Bulaga, Jimmy Graham, or Mike Daniels. Who would you pick to be surprise cut at the end of training camp with the talent we've added, the plan that's getting put in place by LaFleur and Pettin? I got to know who you think's going to get cut possibly if it had to be one of those four.
Mike Daniels. No hesitation on that one.
I love this guy.
It's a tough one, but it's Mike Daniels just because he's not going to get re-signed. They're not going to re-sign him. He's not going to fit into Pettin's defense. They've loaded up on defensive linemen and front seven between free agency and the draft and positional versatility. It's not going to be Mike Daniels. Or it would be Mike Daniels that would be cut. So,
Jay, did we not say this and agree on this earlier in the season?
Yeah, I think that might have been part of our post-draft special, actually.
That actually was like to the T, and I love it because I love Daniels. I agree with that. I love his tenacity, but if you look,
he's coming off an injury also.
To play that outside edge. Oh, yeah, that alone, but Rashawn Gary, Darius Smith, Preston Smith, these are guys that are able to move around, play coverage, and get all around the field and cause havoc. Daniels is just a straight bull rush defensive tackle, defensive end, wherever he plays in. He's going to be that. But you're right, Ryan. I completely agree. I know Jay does too. He just doesn't fit in the defense, and he would save us. If I remember looking correctly, I think it's like $7 million in cap or like $8 million in cap because he had such a big contract for a defensive tackle when he signed it.
Yeah, that's it's a tough call, but I mean, there's no way in heck they're gonna cut Brian Bulaga. I think it's just hilarious that Twitter thinks they need to cut Bulaga when that's the weakest depth at tackle right now is the weakest spot we have on this roster. So there's no way. I'd rather even if we only get 14 or 12 games out of Brian Bulaga, you're still getting 12 or 14 games out of a really good tackle when he's playing. So
he's one of the best tackles, left or right, in the entire NFL, and he could play left tackle if Bakhtiari wasn't such a damn stud.
Yeah.
Well, if Bakhtiari and Bulaga alone, that combination, that's a top three combination all day in the NFL, and it's always mentioned too whenever they talk about tackle combinations. Even not in Packer games, they reference Bakhtiari and Bulaga whenever Bulaga's healthy. It's just amazing to me too why they mentioned Bulaga and being cut, and I'm like, this guy has been a stalwart whenever he's healthy.
Yep. Right now, though, because the tackle depth is definitely lacking. What I do think though is interesting is the depth at guard suddenly is a lot better, whereas I'm
so grateful for Gutekunst in this.
Yeah, they were not good last year at all, and Lane Taylor took a step back. McCray just wasn't up for the task in my mind. But now, I think Jenkins is an absolute stud, the second-round draft pick. I think he's going to end up being a starter sooner than later, and I think then probably Lane Taylor, but then they have Cole Madison surprisingly come back. That was huge.
Yes.
Billy Turner has took every snap at right guard since they started that camp.
That's been big.
I believe that Jenkins is essentially the plug-and-play left guard by week 8, let's say.
Yeah. But now you all of a sudden had guys like Lane Taylor and Justin McCray as your starters. Now you're pushing them down to backups. I mean, that's depth,
Especially with that experience of playing, especially last year.
Taylor could be on that list of surprise cuts, though, too, because of his cap hit. He's $4.5 million. You don't want to pay a guy that gets beat out by young players, sitting on the bench.
If I remember correctly, he signed the extension last year, right?
He's in the last year of his deal this year.
Yeah, Taylor signed a couple years ago.
2 years ago. I thought it was last year. My apologies. Yeah. Well, you know what? Let's go to the next poll. I got to ask it. I got some flack for this one because I listed a guy in there I guess some people don't consider an underdog. but I consider him an underdog with the talent of wide receiver we have. But as an underdog Packer who makes the roster out of these four, who do you think makes it? Trevor Davis, Tim Boyle, Jake Kumaro, or Ty Summers? After the Rodgers comments, it kind of made it simple, but, I mean, I got to see what you got to say.
That is a tough one for me. I was thinking Kumaro because, like you said, the Rodgers comment. But I keep kind of thinking that potentially Trevor Davis might be the one.
Yep.
Because of LaFleur and the offense, plus needing a return guy. And it sounds like they've been using Davis, trying to fit him in some different gadget type plays and kind of use his speed, get him on the outside, whether it's, coming up, passes out of the backfield, kind of get him in space. They do a lot of some of that jet sweep kind of motion, some of those types of things. So it feels like they're trying to find ways to get him on the team. And then obviously his kick return ability and punt return ability, but it's hard. I think that's a tough one.
That's why I put Davis and Cooper on there, because I don't think people realize how big that split is. When you get a head coach that mentions you that's big, especially as a receiver that didn't really get a lot of playing time over the past 3 to 4 years. And then you go look at Kumaro, which you have an elite QB in the league, if not the best QB, comes out and says, hey, this guy knows what he's doing. I want him on the team. Like, it's kind of like, okay, well, there's probably room for both, and the odd man out is probably Jamon Moore, because he's the guy who didn't seem to take a step.
What are your thoughts, though? Because there are other receivers that I've thought about. What about, like, Theo Redding or Alan Lazard? I mean,
Alan Lazard has made strides each season.
I don't know. I think they could surprise some people. No one really knows much about them because obviously we didn't draft them. You didn't see them really play.
Yeah, they were undrafted.
Yeah, they came from they were sitting on practice squad, and then they weren't undrafted free agents this year. So like a lot of us, we like to go watch those undrafted free agents, watch a lot of that film. But what sometimes gets missed are the guys that were signed kind of during the season that are holdovers that were sitting on that practice squad that we then signed to contracts that sometimes we forget to kind of look at their game tape, their game film. And I was watching some of their stuff, and I don't know, Redding kind of popped for me a little bit.
Well, Ryan,
he's got some ability.
My issue, Ryan, with all these receivers, and I keep coming back to this point, and I feel like I'm beating a dead horse, but I don't think anybody's listening to me, and I'm starting to wonder if I put on my Japanese translator, people might understand what I'm saying. So what it is I don't believe they're keeping more than 5 receivers. I think it might even be a stretch to think that they're going to keep 5 receivers because they're keeping 4 tailbacks, probably 5, and they're going to keep 4 tight ends because 3 tight ends at least have to play on the line, and Jimmy Graham is essentially a wide receiver. There's just not enough space. People are stuck on this roster's build-up for the last 13 years under Mike McCarthy. Look at the other people that run this system. They don't have that many wide receivers. That's why if Trevor Davis makes the team, he is going to be a longer, leaner version of what you see the Rams using a Brandon Cooks. Brandon Cooks runs 9 routes, slant routes, stop and goes, and jet sweeps and reverses. That's what Trevor Davis will do. There's just not enough room on this roster for all these receivers, even if you love them.
No, I agree they're not going to keep, like in years past, where people are talking about keeping 7 wide receivers or 8 wide receivers and whatnot. I think 6 is definitely the max.
Yeah, 6 is solid. That's
but it's 5 would be. I wouldn't be surprised because you're right. In this offensive system, the tight end is going to be a lot more important. 2 tight end sets are going to be important, and so you can only have so many pass catchers. And then they're going to have for sure 3 running backs. And then I think the biggest thing is, are they going to actually have a fullback or not? I know that the fullback plays a pretty big role. It depends on how they want to mold this system around this roster, I guess. But I'm not sure on that one. I think that's where that deciding factor is how many wide receivers is kind of up in the air, or the tight ends and wide receivers kind of hinges a little bit on a fullback, I guess.
Well, I look at this, Ryan. if you look at the Rams, how the Rams have screwed up the